I watched Trump's meeting today with Secretary General of NATO Mark Rutte, so you don't have to, and here's my overview. The craziest thing he said is he has not been involved with the Russia-Ukraine war for very long, and it was not an initial focus because this is Biden's and Democrats' war. It's not a Republican war, and it's not Trump's war, and he repeats that over and over and over. The meeting is only 34 minutes long, but he somehow manages to bring up Biden 10 times in 34 minutes. I will say, if you don't speak Trumpanese, very little of what he said is going to make a whole lot of sense, but that's why I'm here to translate. He said one of the main reasons that everyone was there today was to hear about how he is very unhappy with Russia, but then immediately he says, but we'll talk about that another day. He gives Russia an ultimatum to make a peace deal within 50 days, after which time he says that he is going to put a 100% tariff on all products coming out of Russia, and then he says that this is a secondary tariff, and then he at later points talks about a 500% some other secondary tariff, but then says that this is going to be on top. It's all very confusing because, again, he does not understand how tariffs work. He literally thinks that Russia would be paying the tariff. As far as I can actually tell, the purpose of this meeting was basically to just announce that Europe and NATO is going to be buying weapons from the United States to give to Ukraine. Okay, and then he goes on this long rant about how we have the best weapons in the world, and then he talks about the strike in Iran multiple times, saying every single missile that was fired absolutely hit. It was completely massively destructed, and he said on a scale of 1 to 10, he would give the success of that bombing a 15. He then goes on this really long rant where he talks about all these other conflicts that he's been able to solve. So he says India and Pakistan was settled through trade, and had they not settled that, then within a week it was going to be a nuclear war. No trade agreement was signed, though, so I'm not really sure what he's talking about there. He said that settled Rwanda and Congo after it had been going on for 30 years, and 7 million people had been killed, many of them with rough weapons, as he says, like machetes, getting their heads chopped off. As far as I can tell on that, in 2020 there was some sort of economic agreement signed between the two countries that was facilitated by the U.S., but nothing about like a ceasefire or anything like that. He said he solved Serbia and Kosovo. He used trade to solve that. The conflict between Serbia and Kosovo, as far as I can tell, happened in 1998 and 1999, so not really sure what he's talking about. He said we're working on the Gaza Strip. It's one of the worst deals ever made. They gave up a bunch of oceanfront property. I don't really know what he's talking about there, except for to say that there should be a one-state solution where Israel just bombs the shit out of them, which is what he promised in his campaign the entire time. He said they're going to finish the job and flatten the place. He also, after he became president, you might remember, released his whole video of Trump Gaza. So that was really weird. But he did say we're doing pretty well on Gaza. That's what he said. There are Palestinians, innocent Palestinians being killed every single day, but apparently we're doing really good. He said Armenia and Azerbaijan, just mentioned them, didn't say anything about them, just claimed that they did. And then he says that Egypt and their neighbor, but doesn't mention what country it is, but one of the biggest dams in the world, a little bit outside of Egypt, but the U.S. funded the dam and it's going to be solved really quickly. This is another conflict that he in the past has claimed that he has unilaterally solved by himself before. Oh yeah, and he tops that all off by saying that Russia is the only one we haven't been able to get done, even though he mentions that multiple of these are still ongoing, if anything actually happened at all. He randomly throws in that the 2020 election was completely rigged and stolen from him, and of course mentions multiple times that this war would have never happened had he been in office. He said when this war started, Ukraine had no chance, even though they have allies like us who were supposed to support them the entire time. So they did have a chance, and we know that because they've been holding their own for coming up on, 4 years now, 3-4 years. And then he says that he's very excited about the Golden Dome. He talks about Ukrainian cities being bombed. He says that a ton of people leave, but also a ton of people stay, but also a ton of these buildings are collapsed, and they apparently don't use rebar. So when these buildings are collapsing, it's like they're made out of paper. They're not very strong, I guess. And he keeps calling people's living spaces apartment houses, which is just a weird thing to say. I don't know what apartment houses are. I guess just apartments. He said we really became friendly with NATO after this last summit meeting where they agreed, I guess just because they agreed to pay a higher percentage. And then he says that he thinks we could have had a deal like 4 times. And then he says that when the final numbers come out, you'll find out that, in fact, the media has been underreporting the number of deaths in Ukraine, and just he's the only one who knows that yet. And no one else happens to know. He just says that everyone is underreporting. Regarding the tariffs, because he's very definitive on this, he says that this could be a real chance at peace, or it could just be the same thing. Who knows? He says that the Biden administration was the worst administration, not just in his opinion, but in, as he says, everyone's opinion. And then regarding the trade deals, remember he was supposed to do 90 in 90 days. He's now saying that those letters that he sent out are the trade agreements. Now, this is something he said before, but he says we're not going to negotiate because those letters are the trade agreements. So 90 in 90 days, because everyone was calling, remember, they were so worried that they were calling immediately. They couldn't get people on the phone fast enough to answer these countries because they just wouldn't stop calling. No, the trade deals are just the letters that he sent out on social media. A reporter asked if Putin escalates, how far are you willing to go? And he says, don't ask me a question like that. And then they said, how did you tell Putin that this was happening? And he says, I speak to him a lot and I always hang up and say that was a nice phone call. And then there are missiles, so the convos are meaningless. And so basically he didn't tell Russia that he was going to be having this meeting where he was going to be announcing a 50-day ultimatum that would result in 100% secondary tariffs, as he calls them, if they don't come to that agreement. So he's not communicating with other world leaders. He's just using weird press conferences to tell the whole world. Oh yeah, right after saying that his meetings with Putin are completely meaningless, he says that Putin was able to trick Clinton and Bush and Obama, but Putin was not able to trick him. I hope you all remember that time during his first administration where Trump went into a room with Putin for about 90 minutes where no one has any idea what they talked about. And when Trump came out, the talk of the world was how defeated he looked because he clearly got schooled by Putin the entire time. In his first administration, you remember that? He says the auto pen was the biggest scandal we've had in 50 to 100 years. And he says that the only point of the auto pen is to sign what he claims is tens of thousands of basically fan mail coming in from little children every single week who love their country. And so that's what the auto pen is for, is just to sign that. Then he said during the Biden administration, not Biden, because Biden, of course, would have never gone for any of these horrible policies, open borders, transgender for everyone, whatever that means. But he says it's the people that were on the other side of the Resolute desk that were the problem, and he says that they were, quote, sick people. He says the radical left took over the White House, and if he didn't win in 2024, that our country would be completely dead again. On that note, he wraps the whole thing up by talking about how our country was dead a year ago and how we're hot, hot, hot now, baby. He says it like 3 or 4 times. Hottest country in the world. He says that everybody's saying it, and we are hot, 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 but we were dead a year ago. If you tried to watch that, I understand that it would have been very difficult to understand any of what he was saying because it was jumbled and mixed and all over the place. And you can probably tell that by the fact that I was only able to shorten a 34-minute conversation to a 7-minute conversation, even though very little was actual said, because he just rambled and said incorrect things. And so I had to take note of them because I do this thing called fact checking and I can't just let him continually ramble. So anyways, if you've stuck out this long, and I know somewhere between 10 and 13% of you probably have, I do have one ask of you. Could you please, because I was putting out a 7-minute video for you, could you take 15 seconds and go into the link in my bio and follow me on Instagram, just in case this site does eventually get taken down? I would like to not have to rebuild the entire thing on another platform. Thank you so much for being here. Honestly, I really appreciate it. Thank you.